Senator Owens, I thought you left. I was like, whoa. Okay, we're going to call SB 240, Congregate Care Modifications. And, good Senator, we have, at least according to my notes, we have a S1, a substitute 1, a substitute 2, and an amendment 1. So tell me how you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having us in committee. Sorry for not being here on time. I held up. I would like to adopt a second substitute and amendment 1 in my name.
Okay, and so I am, the private chair, I'm going to go ahead and make that motion, then you can speak to that in your testimony.
Perfect.
So I'm going to make a motion that we adopt substitute 2 and amendment 1. Anyone like to speak to that for the committee? Okay, I'll go back to the bill sponsor. We're going to talk about it. Okay, so all in favor of substituting SB 240 with second sub 2 with amendment 1, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Passes 1-0. Okay. The bill's amended before us. Go ahead and speak to that.
You're great. Thanks so much, committee. All right, this bill's been a year in the making. And I want to just do a little background of getting here. Learning that in the past that some of our congregate care, these programs are vital to Utah, and there's a number of them. What I see, I spent my career as a high school counselor, coach, and there were just a few students, not a lot, that were very difficult, who had failed in everything with their families, with law enforcement. They all were on a one-way track headed to prison for us to, as a society, carry them there for who knows how long with who knows how many victims. So these programs are the final safety net, that a place where families can choose. We all like choice. They choose these programs, and I think you'll hear from a few today that have witnessed these programs to be a game changer. Just want to state up front, nothing is more paramount than child safety, and that is what everyone wants, and it has to be expected. And this is a heavily regulated industry, and for that reason, to make sure we have safety for the children to operate there. And if there's bad actors in this realm, they need to just get out or be forced out, because you're giving everybody else a black eye who are making differences for the good in lives of young people. So I just want to make that up front. I have no sympathy for bad actors or anyone who wants to shortcut in this industry. But with that, we were learning that if there was, let's say, a license penalty, that if an industry provider wanted to appeal that, they had to appeal, but that meant that they had to then take on the guilty plea. That's not sure that's constitutional. In fact, I know it's not. So we wanted to make sure that in a business-friendly state, we have due process for all industries. Whether we love those industries or not, that's how we should operate. So that's what I set out to do, was to make sure that this bill modifies regulations related to the congregate care programs, particularly concerning licensing, inspections, and patient access. It ensures fair licensing practices and protects the congregate care programs from unfair restrictions, and streamlines compliance procedures. When compliance needs to take place, they should comply and change and adjust. I think that's what we all want. And when that happens and it's proven and solid, then that latitude is left to the Department of Health and Human Services. They have that ability to then reinstate license and continue to serve families. So, key points. Let's see. The first thing, this is a safety issue that the Department of Health and Human Services, one of the things the bill does is they must decide within 7 days of receiving criminal background checks to grant application for direct patient access. So that's to make sure we don't have anyone with a hidden background working with our youth. A few things that are prohibited. DHHS cannot restrict or prohibit new admission to a program just because it's on a conditional license for that only, or impose restrictions on a program solely because it's involved in an appeal, was what I just spoke to. and the Department of Health and Human Services will conduct inspections of the congregate care programs, provide notifications for facilities about changes in their status, and remove restrictions or conditions from a license if compliance is demonstrated. There's penalties there that you can see. It establishes some time frames and timelines to ensure compliance, and ensures the congregate care facilities meet these requirements concerning license inspections and patient access. We've put some timelines on there where if conditional license are put in place, what it would take to be able to have new clients coming in, and we're happy to speak to those with any questions. I have one of the program directors here with me. I'll have Mr. Bagley introduce himself and be part of my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, and as I'd like to give a special thanks to the sponsor. Senator Owens has been fantastic, and I would also like to recognize the Department of Health and Human Services. They've been super collaborative and instrumental in coming up with the language of this bill. And as Senator Owens explained, it does, it just provides clarity, I think, for DHHS as well as the industry, so that we know what are the steps, what can be expected in the event that mistakes are made and penalties are imposed. What is that process? And it does put in clear timelines and expectations that are put up on the facility, and allows the Office of Licensing to enforce those restrictions and help bring programs back into compliance. I appreciate the working relationship that we've been able to have with the Office of Licensing, and the fact that as an industry, we've been able to reach out to them when we have concerns or problems, and almost immediately get together and solve problems. And I feel like that's how problems should be solved on the state level. So I think Senator Owens did a great job of explaining the contents of the bill, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
Yes, and could you state your name, sorry, for the record?
I'm sorry, I thought since he did, I didn't need to.
No,
Lane,
no, you've got to state first, so we don't know who you are. He may be lying to us, I don't know.
Lane Bagley, and I'm representing The Voice.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
One more, if I could, and I didn't ask him, but I'm going to put him on the spot. If Paul Ray or Alyssa Smales from DHHS would just come and comment on the process that we've been through in the past year, I'd like to have that part of the presentation. I'll ask him for forgiveness later. But. Oh, Shannon, there we go. Even better. Boots on the ground right here.
Yes. Sorry for the disappointment.
No, you're great.
Yeah. All right, good evening. I'm Shannon Toman Black. I am the Director for the Division of Licensing and Background Checks, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I think we've spoken in some other venues that the division really values its partnership with our programs and working together if there are different views on how a process needs to take place, how we look at statute and how we work within our scope. And we have been working with the provider since September of last year and have been really happy to work with the senator here. He's been great to have conversations and ask us how things would be operationalized on the ground if a policy was one way or the other. And we are happy to be here to hear the bill and answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Shannon. Mr. Chair, I just want to have Shannon just verify that we've been working together, getting their information. They've been super helpful in helping with language on the bill and substitutes and amendments. So shout out to Shannon and her team and Paul Ray and Alyssa Smales and all of them who work there. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Senator Escamilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of questions, and having the department here is great, so I'm going to need you. So thanks, Senator. And you and I talked from the beginning. I know you've been working on this, And the reality is there is a need for clarity, and these services are needed, and these individuals need a place to be that is safe and that is addressing their needs. And we need to recognize that we don't have a lot of places, so this needs to be addressed. And to the industry, I know they've been very heavily involved on this conversation as well. So my first question now is technical. I'm looking at the comparison of the bills. So I first want to go to the word, lines 502 all the way to 508. You're going, the department shall make reasonable effort to determine within 7 business days. Can you maybe help me understand the shall make versus, we usually go shall or may. I'm interested in that, the way you came up with
Okay.
that wording.
Well, you could also say must or do your best. Sometimes BCI, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, aren't super responsive, but try to do it within a week so that industry can have the feedback, and you have somebody waiting to accept a job or not, and you lose them. So this is just saying, try to hurry. It doesn't hold them that if it, that's why maybe it could be better language there, Senator.
Yeah, no, and look, I just want to make sure, is this giving to the department the tools that you need? So it's clear, because I think the intent is correct. We need action, because you still have people that are pending sitting in that facility, whether to have them continue to get the care they need, or if there's a serious safety issue, right? Because we don't want any of the bad players.
Exactly.
We want to make sure those are taken care of. I think we all agree collectively
100%.
that there's action. So, department, do you feel this is what you need to, proactively do this?
Thank you for the question. We are currently, just in reality, we are at about 10 days average for our background checks, and we are working to make some procedural changes to help shorten that. So our aim is 5 days. That's our goal, and so we appreciate the encouragement while allowing us to continue to work on our process.
Okay. Then last question, Mr. Chair, if that's okay.
Of course.
And you're adding those lines 595 to 617. Can you help me understand, is this now, one, we heard codifying practice, which I think is critical. We do that a lot, and it should be in code, because, you never know how things change, and we want to make sure those are pieces that are codified. Is this the wording that allows the department to intervene and do best practices and evidence-based approach to safety within congregate care?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. This bill, the vast majority of it codifies what we currently do. It does shift with some specific timelines, how we may deal with some of our outliers, but it just shifts our toolbox. It doesn't, make our toolbox disappear.
Okay.
If I can respond
Yes.
that too, part of the intent in working with all stakeholders was to get the language that works for them and not over, restrict but then that clarity so that industry knows what to expect. And I think that's where most of it is just what they're doing already. And I was able to get a 5-year look back, and it falls right into what they're doing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Senator Thatcher.
Thank you. I just want to speak to the bill a little bit. I think it is absolutely critical to raise the bar. I think the sponsor hit the nail on the head that safety is key and is the most important piece. But the second most important piece is this. What other options are there? I got a phone call in my mid-20s with a request to go and assist with recovering a child that had a background in martial arts, was a martial arts champion that had beaten his father so savagely that he had fractured his skull, and his dad was in the hospital for weeks. I was able to go and recover this child without incident and convince him that this was a better option than jail. If we shut down or make impossible to keep doors open for programs like this, what other option is there besides prison or jail or a law enforcement response that we know doesn't always go our way? So if somebody can give me real-world solutions for how we can better raise the bar, I'm all ears. But I think you have done a great job, Senator Owens, and I just want to voice my absolute support for your efforts here today.
Thank you. I can't take all that credit. It's the people at DHHS and licensing, and especially the providers. They're amazing people, and they just want to help and provide the what if so that there is some help. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Plum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I spoke a little bit with the sponsor today in trying to kind of process through some of this for me, and I am admittedly biased as someone who takes care of sick and injured kids, sometimes in their most critical spots. And I also participate in the state's Child Fatality Review Board, so I have things in my brain that I will never unhear or unsee. And then I have this like lifelong mission thing to feel like a protector. Not for whatever it is, that's just how I came, that's how my DNA came. And so when I read things like prohibits placing a restriction or prohibition on new admissions, it gives me some angst, because there are times when there absolutely must be prohibitions on new admissions or prohibitions on endangering children. And I'm not saying that's the standard, but those times do come up. And so I'm wondering if there might be a different way to phrase that, in that, say, for example, you couldn't for 7 days, after 7 days, place a restriction or a prohibition on a new admission after something horrendous had happened in a facility, not only for the safety of the individual that it happened to, but the staff and the folks who went through something undoubtedly very traumatizing for them as well. There's kind of some coming back together. And so I'm working through my mind of how it's that needle, those needles that are so hard to thread, right? And so that's where my angst comes to. I wonder from the department, do you feel like placing a restriction or a prohibition on your ability to do your job introduces an amount of risk that we need to do something differently about, I suppose is the way I'm saying it?
Thank you, Senator. To clarify, in what we understand the language to mean and the intent as well, is not that we cannot place a restriction or ban. It can't be just because we have a conditional license. And that's not our practice. We don't do that. A ban might be a condition of a license, but it is never solely. We have placed conditional licenses without bans. So that is how we read it and interpret it.
Yeah, and to follow the 100% discretion was meant to still be left with the agency. It just if it's just only because they have the unconditional license and nothing else, then it's like, why are we preventing?
It would take more.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go to the public for any comments or questions on this bill. Please come forward and state your name. We have 3 online, so we're going to go ahead and toggle. So we have Seth Anderson. Is that who it is? No, that's you. Do you want to speak to the bill, Seth? Yeah, I'd love to. Okay, we're going to go ahead and hear from you, and then we're going to come to, if you're online, we're coming to Avital next, so be prepared. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Flint Barber, and I wanted to speak to the need for these programs with my own personal experience and the experience of our family. Senator Owens talked about as his experience as a coach and how you would get these kids that didn't fit in and they had problems, and he's like, their next path is like jail or prison or law enforcement. With our experience with our son, I wasn't worried about him going to jail. I was worried about him making it to tomorrow. And I think that that's actually probably a more broad experience for most parents that send their kid to a program like this. Our son was deeply depressed almost from infancy, and we sought out every kind of care that we could find in terms of medical care and medicine and therapy. And when I would talk to my son, I would say, hey, you know, what does your life look like when you're 20? And he'd say, Dad, I'm never going to be 20. I'm never going to be 17. And so that's a pretty sobering conversation to have as a parent. And so we were really grateful that we were able to find different programs inside of this state where we could get our son additional care. And in every case, we found caring professionals who not only helped our son and stabilized him and gave him a safe place to grow up, but they helped our family, and they helped my wife and I learn what it's like to care for a son with depression and to give him further care. So there is an absolute need, because the resources, once you exhaust therapy and medical resources, this is all that's left. And it was all that was left between us and not having a son. And I'm grateful to say that we still have a son today and that he's happy. He is employed. He has a girlfriend. Like, we see him every week. Things are good, and it's because of these type of programs. So I encourage you to keep him around. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go online to Avital. Welcome.
Hi,
Please say your name and place of residence, and feel free to share your testimony.
my name is Avital Van Leeuwen. I live in Los Angeles, California.
Go ahead. Thank you.
I am a survivor of institutional child abuse in a Utah congregate care program called Alpine Academy. I'm here today as an advocate for all youth who are still suffering at the hands of the troubled teen industry, and for survivors who need a voice. 14 years ago, I was abducted from my California bedroom and taken to Utah against my will. Since then, I have never been the same. Alpine Academy prohibited all contact with the outside world, drugged me, brainwashed me, and abused me. I was a normal and healthy kid, not a criminal. They claimed they were helping me, but my experience was torture and false imprisonment. They tore my family apart and caused lasting trauma. Today, as a voice for all survivors, I stand in opposition to SB 240. This bill will harm youth not only from Utah, but from other states. The state of Utah has an obligation to keep children safe from the numerous harmful programs operating here. Bad actors in congregate care must be held accountable, and the rights of youth must come before business profits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please state your name for the record.
Avital Van Leeuwen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Avital. Okay, you're back in the room.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Andrew Riggle, and I am with the Disability Law Center. We appreciate the efforts that the department has made over the last year to step up inspections and enforcement of congregate care facilities, and but we unfortunately continue to see public reports of continued issues within these programs and facilities. Some of them particularly harmful to youth, resulting in serious injury and death. Still, so while we again do appreciate the commitment that the department has shown to stepping up enforcement and oversight over the last year, we encourage you to continue along that path and provide as much oversight of these programs that you can that care for these very vulnerable children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go online to Natalie Wills. Please state your name and your location.
Thank you. My name is Natalie Wills. I reside in Redwood City, California, Northern California. And as you can see from my display name, or you don't see it, I'm also a certified shorthand reporter. And I'm also a survivor of the troubled teen industry. I was sent away from a stranger who evaluated me for 30 seconds to a place in Utah called Second Nature, who was very eager to then refer me to a basically network of different for-profit facilities. And as a survivor of the abuse that I experienced in these facilities, what I can say is that the children are silenced. They're abused, they're psychologically abused, they watch other kids get restrained for giving dirty looks, and then they're taught that if they don't give a good review and go home and tell their parents or get on the phone and tell their parents that they're getting the help they truly need, they will get worse abuse. So this is an issue of true evidence-based treatment. And just coming from someone who's been to a few of these facilities and has tried to run away from them, I truly felt that running away was a safer place for me than these places. And so the system in place isn't working. You ask what alternatives are there. Any person, child or not, who truly wants to get better will find a way. And the evidence based treatment out there is things like mindfulness meditation. Those things have gotten me through my trauma and allowed me to grow into the person I am. But unfortunately, I got CPTSD from 2 years of being falsely imprisoned for doing things like run away from an abusive family. So I am in opposition of this bill. I think it doesn't hold abuse accountable, and I think it reinforces the cycle. And I think there are other ways. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else here in the room to speak to this bill? Okay, we're going to go online, and we have, just we have 4 more online, and I'm actually going to put a timer on these for a minute, because we do have other bills. So we're going to go to Chelsea. Are you there? And when you hear the little chime, that means your time's up. Okay, Chelsea, your minute starts now. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was muted there. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and the esteemed members of the committee. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Chelsea Filer, and I represent ICAPA Network, an organization dedicated to advocating for the safety and rights of children in congregate care. Now, we strongly oppose SB 240 because it undermines the progress that Utah has made in protecting vulnerable youth in residential treatment. This bill would allow facilities under investigation for abuse, neglect, and even wrongful death to continue admitting children, putting more lives at risk and allowing bad actors to continue operating in violation of Utah law through a long, drawn-out process of appeals. Now, Utah has already made history in 2021 by passing reforms to hold this industry accountable. Since then, real progress has been made. Now, this bill would undo those hard-fought policy changes and weaken the state's ability to ensure these protections are enforced and we're able to intervene before more harm is done. Now, the sponsor mentioned that he supports weeding out the bad actors. Now, what I don't understand is why we're taking away the right of the state to be able to make those choices, to be able to take that action, and to be able to, under their own discretion, decide whether these programs deserve to have conditional licenses and not bring in more kids. Now,
Thank
the
you.
fact
That
is,
timer, that's the chime. That means your time is up. Sorry.
all right, thank you so much. I really hope we can vote no on this bill.
Thank you. Okay, we have Tabitha Petrie. Okay, you're.
Hi,
Go ahead.
thank you so much. My name is Tabitha Petrie, and I am the founder of Survivors Unrestrained, a nonprofit that supports survivors of institutional child abuse. I stand before you today not just as an advocate, but as someone who has seen firsthand the devastating impact of unchecked power in residential care facilities. These facilities are supposed to help vulnerable children, yet time and time again, we hear stories of abuse, neglect, and even death behind their doors. The only thing standing between these children and further harm is oversight. If you pass this bill, you are stripping away their last line of defense. I have spoken to survivors were restrained until their bones broke, denied food and medical care, and silenced when they cried for help. Some didn't survive. If we loosen oversight, we are telling these children that their suffering does not matter, that they do not matter. Please, let's protect our children and not pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we now have Mariah Hurst.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. I just represent the Youth Providers Association here in Utah, and I represent many of the providers who contract with the state to provide services to these youth. And we are in favor of this bill. We think that the 7 days for the background checks will help when people are trying to get people hired. I think giving the state what they need in order to get those 7 days, that will help us have more people accept the position when they need the position, and to move forward in those hirings. And then we are supportive of the bill, and we're grateful for the sponsor for the work that he's been doing. It will help the businesses be able to continue operating, which they need to be able to do. Sometimes things happen and they can be being looked at, and the business can continue to operate. So we thank you for letting us speak, and we appreciate the work on this bill.
Thank you. Okay, we have Meg Applegate. I think you might be muted. There you are. Okay, go ahead.
Am I working? Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Meg Applegate, and I'm the CEO of Unsilenced, which is a nonprofit dedicated to exposing institutional child abuse. I've worked directly with families whose children have suffered or died in these residential facilities in Utah to alleged neglect, medical negligence, and lack of oversight. Even with the law passed in 2021, 3 kids have died in Utah facilities. This proves one thing: we should be strengthening protections, not dismantling them. Right now, the only safeguard preventing further harm during investigations is the conditional licensing process, which halts new admissions. This bill would remove that safeguard. And oversight agencies must be able to do their jobs fully without more children being placed in harm's way. Ask yourself, what message does this send to parents, to survivors, to grieving families? That a facility's right to profit is more important than a child's right to safety. Please vote no on this bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have nobody else online. We'll bring it back, we'll bring it back to committee for further action under discussion. Senator Escamilla.
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chair, to the sponsor, if that's appropriate.
That's appropriate.
Thank you. Can you respond, Senator, on that conditional licensure, that this repeals completely that ability to do that, and what lines, because I'm getting text and I would like to respond to that.
Yeah, so let me find that line for you, Senator. Okay, so line 595.
Yeah.
So just so remember now, the discretion is still left to the state agency, but it says the office may not deny, place, condition, or revoke, refuse to reinstate, suspend, or withdraw the certificate or certification under this, simply because the program is appealing. So that just, you can, I think there's innocence until proven guilty somewhere in the Constitution, or simply because an appeal or adjudicative proceeding is pending. That's the only time that, yeah, it's not saying that if there's an injury or something that it can be revoked, simply for those 2 things.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Thatcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, as a survivor of childhood sexual assault, I am extremely sensitive to the testimonies that we've heard. And I think it's important that we understand and that we are able to differentiate between what this actual bill does and what the actual industry does. Look, abuse is absolutely tragic. It's unacceptable. It should be aggressively investigated, prosecuted, and shut down. In your opinion, is there anything in this bill that prohibits investigating or shutting down abusive behavior?
Not one bit. It simply puts in a process so that there's clarity for all stakeholders to know what to expect instead of wondering.
I agree with that assessment. But this is the other part of that balancing test. If we do not have predictability in the disciplinary process, in the review, the investigation process, and if these agencies are not able to function or operate, then that takes one diversion opportunity out of the equation. And it puts us back to where a family, and I know dozens of kids that were in this situation where they were so far past what their parents were capable of dealing with or handling that the options were jail or straitjackets. Unfortunately, in some cases, death to suicide. And I think that you have done a very good job of diligently walking that line. So while I am sympathetic to the arguments that abuse should be very aggressively and vigorously investigated, I don't believe that your bill does those things. And I believe that it is important. Are we to the point of making a motion, Mr. Chair?
That is correct.
Then I will make a motion that we favorably recommend this bill.
Motion before us. Looks like we lost anyone on the committee like to speak to that. Senator Stratton.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I kind of have an 80-20 rule that I have been formulating, and it seems like oftentimes 80% of the things we disagree on are based on misinformation, and I appreciate the witnesses that have been here, but again, it's important to understand what the bill does, what it doesn't do. I certainly want to make it clear that we do not tolerate abuse in any form in the state of Utah, and we're doing everything to aggressively address that. And so I am concerned about the accusations that have been made. But having said that, having read the bill, and from my understanding of the bill, I stand in support of the motion.
Okay, thank you, Senator Plum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this sponsor and the other members of the committee. I've been sitting here trying so hard to get right with being supportive. And I think I have this, not to go into a therapy session, but I think I have this dueling personality with Senator Plum and Dr. Plum that are kind of battling a little bit right now. And I can't think of any clinical scenario where I would be begging or pleading or wishing for less oversight. I would always want there to be more to make sure that I was keeping my patients and those that I was entrusted with caring for. I would want more. And maybe that's just a me thing, but I can't quite get there. But I don't want that to be seen as I don't want there to be discussion and dialogue and policy change. I just, for me, can't get there. And I wanted to let the sponsor know that because I do know how hard he's working on this.
Senator Escamilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can also add into explaining my vote, I've been reviewing the language, and we've had actually conversations at the Senate Minority Caucus on this, because this is a very important piece of the oversight component. I'm going to vote yes on the bill, and I know the senator has been working tirelessly to get to this language, and I will ask more questions, so I'll be calling a lot of people after my town hall meeting tonight, sorry. But because I do want to make sure that is a delicate balance, but I do see in line 608, is the opportunity for the office to have the maze and they can act and take action. And, it is a lot on the hands of the executive. And, this is a delicate balance that I'm talking about. But I think it's moving better. It is better. So congratulations on making it better. I will just maybe ask you more questions later as it comes to the floor. But I know that there is one of the things that is clear to me and hearing from the providers that are doing this work that I think, as Senator Thatcher was saying, it's just hard work. This is a difficult place and space to serve, and you have to be extremely careful because there may be tons of trauma, and nobody wants to do, more trauma and more harm. But at the same time, either they end up in hospitals, jail, the juvenile justice system, and I don't know, we're not helping. We need to do something. So let's not, we want to make sure we're not tying all their hands, that we're providing tools, but also that we can intervene when needed. So I appreciate that place, and we'll definitely continue working, but I'll be supporting it as it goes to the floor and go from there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Back to the bill sponsor.
Thank you for the discussion, the questions, and Mr. Chair, for all of the testimony. I appreciate the everybody voicing on all sides of this. It's a difficult and challenging industry, and there's a lot of trauma in the world, and there's a lot of stress in life. But one reason why I think you see the number of programs that are successful in Utah is just because there's amazing people there. And I will reiterate and restate that there is no tolerance for abuse or mistreatment of youth. This bill was brought to me by industry, working with the HHS and licensing to try to lift the industry, and they want to root out any bad actors. I love that approach, and they want the best, and they want to continue with their experts to help where they can. And so I especially appreciate the father who traveled here to express his appreciation to industry, who there was no other, what's left, where else do you go? So appreciate the discussion, and I'll continue to work on this, and it will be, again, it was, the bill's meant to not remove any accountability, but tighten some clarity so everybody knows what to expect going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, back to the making the motion. Waive. Okay, so the motion before us is to pass out favorably SB 240, second sub as amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. And all opposed say no. No. So it's 3-2. Okay, congratulations.